Many people find commas very confusing to use. So you're not alone if you're among them. This video is going to teach you how to correct 5 major comma errors in writing. And at the end, you will find it easier to use your commas in your writing. At the end of this video, I'm going to share one tip that I usually use with my students whenever they find it difficult to understand comma rules. Commas are very important. There are many examples of how just a comma will change the meaning of what you've written drastically. There are many funny comma errors online, but this is my favorite. Let's eat grandma. Let's eat grandma. A comma is a pause, and just that pause in the second sentence shows that it's not grandma that you're eating. You're calling grandma to eat. So we really need to learn how to use commas correctly. Let's first go through 2 examples of the easy comma rules before we get into the major problems with commas. Commas are used for lists. Many people don't find this that difficult to remember. If you're given a list of things you bought while shopping, you can say, I need pasta, comma, peas, comma, fish, and some jam. We'll talk about what we call the Oxford comma, which will come after fish in another video. What I would like you to remember is that it's not only when you're listing words or items that you use commas. When you're also listing a procedure, a process of something. For instance, if you're writing a narrative essay and you want to create a particular effect, like slow motion in a movie, to get more marks in your narrative, you want to explain how something is done. That's a process. You also require commas because you're going to make a list. In this case, not a list of objects, but a list of processes, stages. So if you want to write something like he raised his left hand, comma, waved it in the air, comma, or maybe you're writing how something is done, like first of all, you put in a cup of water, comma, then you pour in. So the list is for any type of list, not only objects. It's also a bit easier to remember that commas should be used with dates and addresses. Whether you're writing in a letter or just however you're writing an essay. Dates could be written 5th October, comma, then the year. Or it can be written, or you can write them October 5, comma. But however you write your date, there should be a comma before the year. Usually we also have commas before a city. If you mention a town in a city, it's usual to put a comma before writing the city. So you have Aberdeen, Scotland, whether in an address or just in an ordinary essay that you're writing. We have Victoria Island, Lagos, a comma in between before the city. Note also that when you're writing a letter, when you're ending your letter, what we call the subscription or the complimentary clause, yours truly should have a comma. Yours faithfully, a comma. Even for your friend, best wishes from, a comma before your name. So let's now go into the 5 major comma errors, and we need to identify and correct in order to write well. And as I said, we're going to do this in a way that you find easy to understand. The first major error is a comma splice. This is an error that many English language learners make, and we need to stop them. Stop making these mistakes. A comma splice means that you put a comma right in the middle of 2 sentences. You have 2 ideas. Each idea you have written as a full sentence that can stand on its own. but you now want to put these two ideas into one sentence, you just use a comma. That's a comma splice. We also have a video that explains this further, and I'll put the link below. Let's look at this example. Bernice came into the room. She wanted to talk to Fred. There's a comma in between these two ideas. That's a comma splice because each part of this sentence can form a sentence on its own. Bernice came into the room is one full sentence. She wanted to talk to Fred, another full sentence. So you cannot use a comma to separate two full sentences. You need a semicolon, or you add a conjunction. So a better way to write it would be Bernice came into the room, semicolon, she wanted to talk to Fred. So avoid comma splices and you're ready to go. The second one is missing the introductory comma. Now, what's an introductory comma? Sometimes we explain a background and give a background information before we actually write or say what we want to say. In this example, for instance, while riding her bike, Mary, now I've not told you the major thing I want to say. Maybe Mary fell down, but I've not said that. I just gave you a background information so that you understand where she fell down or how she fell down. That's why I started with while riding her bike. That's an introductory phrase, and it requires an introductory comma to separate it so that the person you're writing to or the person who's going to read your work will know that the background information has started. You're now introducing the main information. That's why we call it an introductory comma. You use it even with introductory words like frankly, suddenly. The main information needs to be introduced with a comma. So the correct way will be while riding her bike, comma, Mary, then you give us the correct information. Frankly, I feel that, you see, that comma introduces the main information you want to talk about. This also works with direct address, like when I call your name. Let's say your name is Dave, and I'm talking to you. Dave, comma. I think you should. So when you're writing things like that, you should make sure you have that comma after that introductory part to show you that the main information is coming up. So we remember to put commas after introductory phrases and words. Another major error in the use of commas is missing a comma beside a quotation. Sometimes when we're writing, we want to quote somebody, or we want to put in some conversation, some dialogue, especially narrative essays. Who would like to read a full page or even a book that has no dialogue in it? It will be very uninteresting. So before you put a quotation, there should be a comma beside it. So let's make use of this direct speech. We have, he replied, I must get there quickly. So it's wrong to write this. There's no comma separating the person who said it and what was said. Look at this again. I must get there quickly, he replied. So no matter how you're writing it, whether you put what was said first or last, you need to separate it with a comma from who said it. So the correct way is he replied, comma, I must get there quickly. Or I must get there quickly, comma, he replied. So we've learned to use a comma beside a quotation or direct address, direct speech. We put a comma to separate the person who said it and how he said it and what was said. Another important error to take note of is missing the interrupting or bracketing commas. What's a bracketing or an interrupting comma? Sometimes when we're writing or even when we're talking to friends, we give extra information. When we're writing, that extra information can be removed from the sentence and the sentence will still make sense. Now, it is good when writing to show that this is an extra information. Let's give an example. Our communication skills lecturer, Mrs. Zarapa, just entered the room. Now, are they the same people? Is Mrs. Zarapa the same as my communication skills lecturer? Only a comma will tell. So if I say I communication skills lecturer, comma, Mrs. Zarapa, comma, just entered the room. So that means I just gave you an additional information. The name of the person is not necessary. So I could still say our communication skills lecturer just entered the room and the sentence will be correct. But Mrs. Zarapa is an extra information, which may or may not be important to you. That's why I have to set it off with a comma before and after, because it can be lifted out. That's why it's called bracketing. So I'm telling you, this information which I've separated can be removed. It's just an extra. Then look at this. Sarah, who sings beautifully, will take the first song. It's important to, I could just write Sarah will take the first song, and that will be correct. But I want to give you more information about Sarah, that she sings beautifully, maybe to convince you to allow her to take the first song, or so that you want to listen to her sing. It's just an additional information. But to show that it's an additional information and is also talking about the same person, we'll separate and bracket it out. We set it off with two commas, one in the beginning, one at the end. So when we are giving extra information, we should be careful to make sure we set them off with commas. Now, the last one we want to talk about is the fact that some people add unnecessary commas. I've experienced the fact that many students, when they find it very difficult to understand the use of commas, they just make up their minds to put commas anywhere and everywhere. Now, you can read a sentence in a way that will make you add a pause to it at any particular place you want. However, that's not correct. It's only natural pauses that take commas. For instance, I could read this sentence to add a pause here. And as a student, I will write a comma there, but I'll be wrong. I'll say something like, she came in because I told her to. That's unnatural. Nobody speaks like that. The correct way to say it is, she came in because I told her to. There's no pause in it. So once there's no pause, no comma, don't just put any unnecessary comma. Or somebody can say, my teacher came in and decided to give us a test. That's an unnatural pause. If you're speaking, you rarely say something like that. What you will say is, my teacher came in and decided to give us a test. No pause. So there's no comma here before the and. It's unnecessary. And so many others. So what have we learned today? Commas show natural pauses and they clarify meaning. Remember grandma, eating grandma? So they clarify your meaning. So we need to learn how to use commas. And we talked about the fact that we should not put a comma to separate two full sentences. Two sentences that can stand alone. Don't put a comma in between. We need a semicolon, remember? We also learned that when we start with a word or phrase as a background information, we need to stop it with a comma and then show that we are now about to say the main thing. Secondly, you see, that's just background information to show you this is the second thing I'm saying. I've not said the main thing. So I need to put secondly, comma, to now tell you, oh, the main thing is coming. Secondly, comma, I feel that. So that's how that is, introductory comma. Then we also learned that the comma should come beside a quotation or direct speech. You need to separate the person that you mentioned who said something, or the person who made the quotation, the person you're quoting, the name of the person you're quoting, and how that quotation was done before you separate it from the actual quotation. That's very important. Then we also said that whenever we're giving additional information which could be important or not important, we should bracket them or set them off with 2 commas, one at the beginning, one at the end. So we need to keep on practicing how to use our commas each time we write. We should not add commas everywhere. Now, before we leave this, remember my tip. Whenever I find out my students find use of commas very difficult, what I've always used and which has worked is to give them these 5 errors and tell them to take them one after the other, not at a time, fully. So you get to choose the duration. It could be, you could do it in 5 weeks, one for each one. You could do it in 1 day. So what it means is that, let's say you decide to do it for 2 days. All your writing on the first 2 days, you're going to concentrate on making sure that you don't write a comma splice. If you're in school, whatever lectures that you're taking, whatever notes you're copying, letters you're writing for the time that you're dealing with comma splice alone, forget about every other thing concerning commas and make sure you do not write a comma splice. When you've got that, then you take another time for the next one. So when you choose all these 5 errors, one after the other, at the end, you now know them all and you can practice them and go ahead, write, and keep on writing the way you should. So I hope you've learned. So share in the comments with us anything else you want to say or you want us to teach you.